So, all right, the recording is started. First off, thank you all so much for being here today. I think Joe has some awesome information. I got a little sneak preview of it the other day, and I definitely look forward to seeing what he has in the full disclosure. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe here. But thank you all so much for being here.
Paul, thanks, and thanks everyone for joining. And if it's awesome information, it's because it's not my information. It comes from brains smarter than me, so I'm more than happy to share it. But I've put together some things and on this piece called Game Forge that I became introduced to a couple of years ago as Mark Sweeney and Brian Bailey were developing this thing. And as I learned down at PGA, I unfortunately might go the death by PowerPoint route here. So you'll hear me, you won't have to see me too much, but it's kind of the best way to explain this tool that's out there. And it's, I saw a presentation that they gave, and I'm going to kind of hit some high points of it as we get towards the end of it. And I hope I can kind of enlighten you. I think all of us get asked a lot of times, what's the next big thing out there? And having the opportunity to go to the PGM schools, the kids are always saying, well, what's the next big piece of technology? What is it? Well, it's all that information that's out there. That's what the next big piece of technology is. And how you are able to use it is probably as good as any technology or system, force plate or TrackMan that you can put down there. Understanding where you are and where you need to go is probably the best thing. I saw Patrick Jackson hopped on here. I think I was telling Patrick the other day, he said, why didn't you grow a beard during the quarantine? And I said, because I worried when I shaved it off, I would find an extra chin underneath there, the way I've been eating. So without any further ado, let's kind of get started. And Paul, I'll use your guidance here. If I push the right buttons, we should see something here in just a second.
Yep, there it comes.
All right.
And also, I wanted to let everybody know, if you have any questions throughout Joe's presentation, feel free to use the chat feature or go ahead and ask during this.
Yeah, can everyone see? There should be a screen. I'm going to make it just the presentation, but it should say Game Forge up there, Paul.
Yep, you're good there.
Cool. All right. Well, what is it? Why is it? How is it different? And I think all of you on this webinar this morning know me. It's not my business to sell anything. It's just, this is something that's uniquely different that I've come across. There are great stats things out there. There are guys that work with the LPGA and tour players. There was a gentleman named Chris Sells, and right now, I'm sorry, but I can't remember his system, but he was working with Jonas Blixt. He's done stuff with players on the PGA and LPGA tour, almost to the standpoint of never seeing a shot and telling Jonas at one point, you need to take your 6-iron to the equipment van because the shots you're hitting with it tell me something has to be wrong with the golf club. And sure enough, the lie was off on a replacement 6-iron that they had sent him. So there are stats that can kind of follow your game. I think Decade is a great one out there, and that actually starts helping people decide how to play shots and where to aim and where to have your safest route to your lowest score. So this Game Forge thing, I got kind of hooked up with, and it was a little bit different. And it's a system that tracks both playing and practice. On the system right now, there are over 2,500 drills, tests, and games. As I'll show you, it goes to great lengths and detail to explain each and every drill, to the standpoint of, if you don't understand how to do it, it'll probably give you another drill. One thing that's really cool about it is it holds your students accountable to practice. You can tell by essentially your dashboard whether they have practiced and done the practice or not. And I'm going to try and remember to tell you a very interesting story about doing the practice and recording your score. There is an artificial intelligence in this thing in the background that is always watching. It's always watching how you're doing in practice, and it's watching how you're doing in play. And to kind of dive right into it, that's one of the first things that really showed me, hey, this is an assistant. And that's kind of when it's like an assistant for me without having one. And it's just way more in a stats program. That artificial intelligence, let's say we had a player who was struggling with 5-foot putts and we give him a very simple drill to putt 5-foot putts every day. One with your left hand, one with your right hand, one with both hands, and one with your eyes open, one with your eyes closed. Let's say that player were to make those 5 putts every day, 10 days in a row. Well, they're in about the 90th percentile of practice. But that artificial intelligence in the background is going, you know what? This hasn't made an ounce of difference in this person's score. It's a useless drill. Let's give them another one. And having something like that behind you is really cool. This is probably one of the neatest stories. Brittany Altamari came out of University of Virginia, where Kim Llewellyn was using this thing as a prototype. And Brittany last year recorded her best year on tour, and I tried to cut out just a little piece of it. I think she made $795,000 and qualified for the Solheim Cup. And literally, it was by her own basis, not becoming a nerd, but being able to track things that would tell her what to practice, when to practice, and if it's making a difference. So it definitely is making a difference in players' performance out on the tour, out on college, and even in junior. All right, so this is pretty cool. I shared this with Paul earlier, and I hope y'all kind of enjoy this. What you're looking at in front of you is a stat. It's called in-position analysis, and these particular numbers are pulled from Mark Brody's stuff on the PGA Tour. The gray dotted line that you look at is the tour average on the PGA Tour. That's the tour average. And if we use what the tour counts as in position and we take it to put it into the GameForge tool here, essentially you can say it's when you hit the ball within 8 feet of the hole and made the putt. Well, if you look way over at the far left, when the guys on tour hit the ball within 8 feet and make the putt, they do it 100% of the time. If you look way out to the right, between 290 and 300 yards, it's a 0%. So I hope that explains the graph. That's just what these guys on tour do. Now, the blue line is a player on tour, and this is all of 2019. And this player, I'm going to tell you right now, had a great year. One of the best years. I mean, I wouldn't say he had a bad year, but if everybody's looking at this graph, what areas does this player have a lot of problem with? I mean, a lot of problems with. If you're looking at what I'm looking, he's at 0%. It kind of says 40 to 70 yard. We might even think it's that 45 to 65 yard area. I'm going to let you think for about 2 seconds of who that player was. And they had a good year last year. So there they are, 0% in that area. If you look at the top left, did that surprise anybody? Unbelievable to think that the year Tiger had winning the Masters, and I was reminded of this when I watched the replay of the Masters. Some of you probably are shaking your head or nodding and going, wait a minute, what did Tiger do on that 18th hole? He didn't reach the green. He had about 50 yards to the green. He didn't knock it inside 8 feet, and he didn't make the putt. But if you look down below, those numbers in parentheses, those are the number of shots that Tiger or the particular player took from that distance. Basically all year, he hit 8 shots from there. He avoids that area like the plague. That's called managing your game. Now, this might be interesting because you're going to look at the blue line first and go, oh yeah, that would be pretty neat. And then you can look at the name on the left. Matt Kuchar, he's a human ATM machine. So one of the things that stats does in a way is to say you don't have to be perfect on everything, but you do have to kind of be close to the average. We'll take a look at this live in a second, but hopefully that was a little bit of interest to everybody. And Paul, if you're cool with it, I'm going to kind of get through this part, and then maybe before we go live, if we have a question or two, we'll take a look at it. So GameForge, basically there's your login page. You get to your home page, and if you all look over on the left, it's your basic stats program, so to speak. I mean, it's got an index, it's got trends, drill assignments, leaderboard, scoreboard, skills. By the way, this is a great tool for teams, especially high school teams and college teams. because you can actually start to rank your players and see which of your players are trending up and which of your players are maintaining and which may be trending down. It's been a huge help to coaches. I know Kim Llewellyn left Virginia, but she took this tool with her. And in her first year at Wake Forest, they finished runner-up in the NCAA. So she'll tell you it's just been a great, great tool. Across the top, and essentially with everybody kind of out right now, one of the young ladies who's a rookie on the tour, Maya Schechter. I mean, you can click on that, you can get the breakdown of the scores. That's pretty basic stuff, but it gets a little more complicated, and that's way beyond my pay grade when I start seeing these things. I know the dip looks like my investment portfolio right now, but you can kind of see when certain scores and certain areas of the game are improving or not improving. Here's the tool that really started to catch my eye. This is called the GameForge Index, and it looks very, very complicated, but it's not. If you look at the very top, underneath where Sandra Changage's name and information is, it says GameForge Index Sandra 12/31/18 through 1/20/1/120. The numbers underneath there, that number in the middle is 0. That's even par. As you go to the right, that's 1 over, 2 over, 3 over, 4 over. And as you go to the left, that's -1, -2, -3, -4. Over on the left-hand side, these are the portions of the game that are broken out. And what you're always looking at here is something in your game is pulling you to play like a 2 under par player, and something else in your game is pulling you to play like a 2 over par player. So when I start, from my feeble mind, when I could say, hey, we want more things on the left than we want on the right, that became obvious. Sandra struggled really terribly last year on the tour, but she played a lot of off-tour events. So these particular ones were her tournament scores on tour. The dotted line basically says, you know what, in all honesty, at the end of last year, you played like a person who shoots just a hair over 73. And sadly, that was kind of how her game was. She had some strong points, but some things that were holding her back were definitely making a difference. I'm going to kind of show you over on the left-hand side in a second how those look. But if you put all of her rounds in there, she was a different person. Some of those things were better. Sometimes she would play some Suncoast Series events or some state opens, and the performance really, really kicked things up. So again, as you go live, you're going to see some things. There's a note here. You see 2 particular colors. Green is good. That's green, not the guy from Wall Street, greed, but green is good. And there's an orange color, and orange color doesn't necessarily mean bad. Orange means you're actually outside the parameters of what good performance would be. And sometimes you can be way, way better. If you look over on that left-hand side, we'll kind of go down some of the easy stuff there. You see birdies, eagles, etc. Fairways, greens and regulation, effective greens and regulation, in positions. Effective greens and regulation is, did you hit the green? And in position on this particular system is 20 feet and in, and a blackjack is 8 feet and in. So it's kind of looking, how often do you knock it close? How often do you knock it really close? How many times do you hit the green? So looking at this, we can take a quick look and kind of go, okay, I've got to help a few things. Now, as I move forward here, I want to make one funny story about Sandra. She is literally sitting in a rain delay in a tournament last year, and she texts me and she goes, you know what? She goes, I don't make any putts. I don't make anything when I hit the green and I'm 20 feet and in. Sandra is, I believe at that point, was out west. Mark Sweeney is in Orlando, Florida. He and Sandra do not share each other's text messages. He's only met her once. Mark Sweeney, no sooner than 5 minutes later after Sandra sent that text, said, hey, tell your player Sandra Changage she needs to practice putts in the 20-foot and under range. She doesn't make anything. If she could make one, it would probably mean a difference of about $25,000 to her at the end of the year. 2 people that don't know one another technically, and I get those texts within 5 minutes of each other. So the stats and the numbers really do start to make a difference. This is kind of interesting, and then we'll go live here in just a second. This is this young lady, Maya Schechter. This was last year as she played out on the Symetra. Kind of okay. She definitely excels in some things. P6 is how many times you hit your third shot, let's call it a chip shot, within 3 feet of the hole. Well, She's pretty good at conversions, about 91%. And we'll take a peek at some of these live. Now, that was last year. However, if we look at her when she went to Q school, you see a different player right there. So the system, and she's been using this religiously for over a year, is helping her and telling her what to practice. And just by doing that, it's following her trends, knowing the areas that she's solid at, knowing the areas that we need to pull over to the left side. This is just a couple other graphics. It can kind of break your game down into pitching, short game, and basically it's like a speedometer. If it's red, you're in trouble. If it's yellow, it's probably time to work on it. And if it's green, it means go. Here's just a quick, and I'll give you guys a live shot of this, but this is just a quick idea of the drills. This is just literally a listing of the drill. When you go in here, you want to find your category, what skill you want to work on putting, you want to work on speed control. What level do you want to be? Do you want to be a professional? Do you want to be a collegiate? And you can start assigning these drills. The beauty of this thing is the way this system sets up. It gives you a dashboard for drills. So when I open the system, I can physically schedule Kendall Griffin to do 5 drills a day, Gene Reynolds to do 3 drills a day. Maya loves 4 drills a day and she's happy. When they do those drills, those colors will be ghosted out. And where that X is, I'll see a score, and it'll either be a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, telling me how they did the drills. So here's the interesting story about the scoring the drills. Oh, I'm going to show you this too. If I clicked on one of the drills and I'm like, okay, I don't know what the dispersion drill is, or I don't know what the grouping drill is. When you run your mouse over that, a screen's going to pop up and it's going to say, here's the putting read drill. Here's the name of the drill. This is the layout. This is the description. Oh, I still don't understand it. You click on view diagram and it gives you a picture. I still don't understand it. You click on the thing below and a YouTube video comes up and shows someone actually doing the drill. So it is almost, aside from me, it is almost idiot proof. Before we do that, when they were first putting this system out, Mark told me a very interesting story. He had a player on the LPGA tour who was doing the assigned drills. She was scoring 5 on one particular drill over and over. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of math and algorithms and regressions and stuff way beyond what I studied in college, but they have to get it right. And they were almost perplexed because this young lady, every time they gave her a drill, she kept scoring 5s, and yet her score never changed. And they'd give her another drill and she would score 5s again, and her score never changed. And finally, randomly, Mark actually ran into her caddy in Orlando on an off week and said, hey, I have to ask you a question. Does so-and-so, is she like incredible at these drills? And the caddy basically said, nah, she's okay. He goes, what do you mean okay? And he goes, yeah, she does okay. And he goes, well, he records these and every score we get is a perfect score. It's a 5. But he goes, oh, no. He says, if she didn't do very well at the drill, she doesn't record her score. Sad to say, that player missed their tour card by 3 spots. Had they put her actual score in, it probably would have made a difference. Paul, is it okay if we try and go live here?
Definitely.
Or do we have any questions? Or I can pop back to the regular screen if you like.
I haven't seen anything come through in the chat feature.
All right. If it's pretty cool, I'll pop this up here for a second.
Yeah.
And so this should put us into GameForge. Some of the cool things that are in here. So I'm just going to keep Sandra's 2019 performance on here. One of the things that's really neat is they have a thing called benchmarks. So if Sandra wants to compare herself to, and by the way, they have a tool that scrapes the stats off of the PGA Tour. As I said, they follow those Mark Brody ones, scrapes the stats off the LPGA Tour. It can go to, oh, I'm drawing a blank right now. And it's the one where all the college scores are. And I apologize. I'm just brain cramping on the name, but they can take all those stats and all those college stats. And so Sandra can say, okay, what does the average LPGA player look like? The gray lines now show you with the average player on the LPGA and all the stats, this is where they stand. Now, if I want to be a top 10 player, okay, that's a different picture. Now we can see where the differences are. If I want to compare that to an average PGA Tour male, we can start to see how so much more falls on the left side. I'm going to, all those names on the left, I'm going to show you something because when you enter the rounds, they make a whole lot more sense. And Brian and Mark have gone to painstaking lengths to make sure that nothing is misunderstood in that. I'm going to show you something here for a second, and you all will probably not be surprised at this at all, but they were able to pull Dustin Johnson for 2019. And if you kind of look at this, there's only two areas he really suffered in. He didn't hit a lot of fairways, and he very rarely got the ball up and down when he needed to. But the rest of his game, as you can plainly see, is off the charts. So essentially, what do these numbers or these words on the left side, if you were to go and you were to enter a round, and I'm just going to, again, maybe I'll pull up Maya here. Is it a tournament round? Is it a practice round? Is it qualifying? 9 holes, 18, round 1. Select the tour you play on. It's got about every tour you can find. Sandra Changaja was a pretty tough bird and pretty critical. And she's like, it's way too difficult to enter these rounds. And that was the first day she entered for rounds. The second day, she said, my God, this might take 45 seconds. So it's literally like, and again, not to poke fun, but she goes, I always get it wrong the first time. So your score relative to par, she put 70. So the computer thought she shot 70 over, which is not really in her wheelhouse. But what's your value? Okay, you want to shoot 1 over, 1 under. Basically, you go down. Did you have any eagles? No. Birdies? Did you have any? Yeah, I had 3. Did you have any bogeys? I had 2. Double bogeys? No. Par 5 scoring. What it wants to know is, what were you for the par 5s? Were you 1 under? Were you 2 under? Go for it. What does a go for it? You roll the mouse over and it tells you the go for it. This includes the second shot on par 5s or tee shots on par 4s that land within 50 yards of the green. If you have a chance to go for the green, it wants to know, did you try? Fairways, we know what that is. Greens and regulation. What's an effective green? An effective green is when you're within 40 feet. What's an in position? That's when you're within 20. Blackjack, that's when you're within 8 feet of the hole. So literally it starts, I mean, as you can plainly see, it doesn't, what's a bomb? A bomb is a putt longer than 20 feet. So you start entering the round and it literally takes you no time at all. And as you know, most good players have their own little system of a check mark, or, you know, if Sandra were to hit a green in regulation and it was an in position, she just put IP. So at the end of the round, she could go along and just tag those things in. And a couple of the other ones, P6, that's, I'm going to show you something quickly in a second. P6 is basically when do you get your third shot or a chip shot within 6 feet of the hole. And it is spooky what it takes to succeed out there to get that shot within 6 feet. Scrambling, it auto calculates it for you. Did you have any chip ins? This is a cool thing. Disruptors, it wants to know, did a car horn honk in the back of your backswing? Did you accidentally step on a hole and twist your ankle? Because sometimes when scores are outliers, it can also attest that to a disruptor. You add the round in and you're good to go. The drill assignment, as I said,
Joe,
is
before you,
yeah.
We did have a question come across there from Kevin Walker, just asking if you use this system for your non-tour players.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And let me go back to the Game Forge Index. This is what's really been cool with it. Now, Kevin, that is an awesome question, and as you and I know, especially high school kids, they get real excited about it and they go, I'm going to do this every day. And about a week and a half later, you go, you haven't done it once, son. But if you keep telling me you're going to get that, those juniors, especially high school kids, they can put their score in and now they can go, wait a minute, I want to play D1. What does a top Division I person look like? What are their numbers? What are their benchmarks? Okay. What about the top 100? That's going to be a little different number. So amateurs, high school kids, they can start to compare themselves to the levels of ability that they want to attain. Maybe they want to go to a D2 school. Maybe they want to go to a D3 school. So it is some of these to me, and I constantly call Mark and Brian, and I'm like, are you sure those numbers are right? And he said, man, when you're talking about college and you're talking about the top 100, you're talking about a lot of different scores and a lot of different ways to perform. So yes, I do use it for people of all abilities. And at the very end here, I think that's what really started scratching my head. I'm like, it is really for people of all abilities, not just competitive people. I hope that helped. Yeah, I was going to show you all the drill assignments. So they have this cool little thing, and let's say I can assign the drills myself, and I showed you all that screen, but I can also go to auto assign, and that's where this guy gets really interesting. So let's say I want to auto assign Jean Reynolds some drills. She's on kind of hiatus right now, like all the players are. Here's what, again, you float it over there if you don't know what it means. Basically, it says it adds specific drills to match the player's game force index, strengths, and weaknesses. The computer is going to go in and find out where they need to work. How many drills do I want for her? I want 3 a day, or I assign the current week, I'm going to assign next week. Now I can go in there, and there is all next week's plan for her. And I will probably get a text from her in about 10 seconds that says, back off on the drills. So it is a way for you to engage your students, to make their practice purposeful. And again, I can go on there. Let's see here, the towel landing drill. Pretty simple, tells you exactly what you have to do. Scores, skills, and that's part of the reason I put this on that PowerPoint, y'all, is because you can start clicking on here and you can find things that are just unbelievable, that just have so much depth to it. But the ability just to go up and look at a player of some kind and pull their stats up and think, okay, Kendall Griffin is a college player and she's at LSU, so she's D1. She wants to be top 100 female. Where is her game setting right now? There's some areas she's above the average in fairways. What's our goal? Our goal is to take the things on this right side and find the things right away that we need to start moving over towards the left. And as you would suspect, a lot of times for her, 3 putts and bombs. I mean, we need to make those 3 putts go away. And we need to start, when those start moving over, then you're going to see where your effective greens. Did she convert? Did she make a birdie? Did she make a par? She's clearly having problems on that right now. So it's been a great help to me, and I would love to push every button, but I'm going to give you all the address at the end, and y'all are welcome to go on there. I think there's a 30-day free trial, and it makes you look like a genius. It really, really does. And the input of the score is about the coolest part because it really doesn't take long at all. Some of them can be a little bit labor intensive.
We did have a question kind of about that too there, Joe. What the cost on it?
I believe right now, if I'm not incorrect, it's $9 a month to the students. And I know they have different setups where you could either pay and make it part of your program, like a Coach Now, where you might pay a price for a year per player, and then you could charge the player what you wanted to charge them. I tend to set it up. I let the players go and use it, and I'll charge the price of a lesson every 3 months for overlooking and overseeing and literally going in and kind of going, okay. And yes, it is more than just clicking the auto assign drills, because there are things, again, I'll use Sandra as a typical example of that. When she knew she wasn't making those 20-foot putts, the AI gave her a ton of drills in the 10 to 20-foot range, and her score didn't change. And she very blatantly said, this thing is useless. It's not changing my score. I chatted with Mark Sweeney and Brian Bailey, and I said, what's to say we don't have her start practicing bombs and putts outside 30 feet? And we had her do that. She immediately started making more putts in the 10 to 20 range, and she won the next 3 Suncoast Tour events. So sometimes your oversight as a coach, might help a little bit. So that's the way that I've charged that in the past. But I believe it's $9 a month or $99 a year right now. Cool. And if everybody's cool with it, I was just going to show a few of these slides from the presentation that Mark and Brian did, and they had a Zoom cast about 3 weeks ago, and it just blew my mind away. And it was, what does it take to win, or what's the difference between a Symetra Tour player and an LPGA Tour player? I know it seems like I'm biased on this, but when we get to the end of this, all of a sudden a question went in my mind, and they go, "Oh yeah, we have that information." So basically, the average winning score is the difference between 17 under and 12 under. A different way to look at that is you got to make at least 18 birdies to win on the LPGA Tour. You got to make 14 birdies to win on the Symetra Tour. These are just kind of the LPGA, how many birdies they were making that particular week. This is the majors, the difference. Again, how many birdies would it take to win a major? And all of a sudden, people start going, where am I going to find more birdies? Well, this is pretty interesting. This is where it started to really kind of make me scratch my head. When you talk about the number of birdies that the LPGA and the Symetra players make, that's not a huge difference. When you talk about the bogeys that they make, that's not a huge difference. The par fives on the LPGA Tour, players averaged 2.2 under par. On the Symetra Tour, 1.7. What about the players who don't make the cut? Birdies and bogeys still look the same. One of the areas that really sticks out is the par fives. Symetra Tour, those players are even par for 2 days on the par fives. Those par fives are so huge out on the tour, and literally the LPGA Tour, it's almost the same thing. It's under a half a stroke. So now you have to look at, where am I going to find those birdies? And those par fives were a typical example as they started talking about it. I mean, there's a perfect area to say there's more than one way to get there. Do you want to do strength exercises to get more distance off of the tee? Do you want to really start working on your wedge game? Do you want to start working on putts over 30 feet? Do you need to start going for the greens more often? Do you need to be able to hit your third shot or your chip shot 10 to 20 yards off of the green a little bit better? And pretty much the numbers that come from most of the tours say 83% of your birdie putts come from basically 20 feet and in. So that's a huge place where you can start practicing. Another area they looked at is, how many times do you hit the ball in position within 20 feet? Don't just hit the green. How many times do you hit it within 20 feet of the pin? And vice versa, this might be more of a decade type. How can you play defensively so that you're not giving strokes away? How can you make sure that your chip shot and your putt are really start paying off? So if you think back to that Game Forge Index, what are you doing? You're trying to get those green and orange lines from the right side. You're trying to push them over to the left, and the things you do good, you want to push them further to the left. So this was really kind of cool, and this kind of finishes it up a little bit here. The P6 conversion. 50 to 60%. We'll talk about that in a second. Putting, not a 10% difference between the top 10. They make 75% of their 1 to 8 footers. But the area you really start to see that sticks out here is the 20 footers. The difference, I mean, that's a 10% difference. 20 to 40 feet, they're almost the same. So what did it take to go from the Symetra Tour to the LPGA Tour? 50% of the greens you hit need to be within 20 feet. 50% of those greens, you got to make birdies. And the part at the bottom that just blew me away, and they had a lot of Symetra Tour players on this particular webinar, 50% of your green side wedges should land inside 6 feet of the hole. And that just blew those players away, because they're going, because everybody thinks 3 feet, and they're like, no, you are not chipping the ball within 6 feet of the hole when you're on the side of the green. It's that, and all you have to do is 50% of the time. That's what the best in the world on the LPGA are doing. And it was just amazing. So, they kind of set up some things. What's your target? It'd be great to hit 14. You got to hit 7 of those. You got to make 3.5 birdies. There's some targets for your putting inside 8 feet. And you can take that with your practice and you can walk this out. But the thing on the bottom here, this 50%, I've talked to more high school and college players lately, and it's amazing when you don't tell them that you're testing them and you just put some different chips out and you go chip that, chip that, chip that. And you go, well, we just chipped 8 balls and you have 2 within 6 feet of the hole. That is this percentage. I think it's 25% if I'm not incorrect. You need to get to 50%. You don't even need to get to 100. And it's like the easiest area of low hanging fruit to definitely work on. And that's Brian Bailey and Mark Sweeney. If you go to it, it's called mygameforge.com. And I'm almost sure if you need to put a code in there, you can put PGA guy in there. It's just, I think that gives you a free 30-day trial. Again, I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm just, this is a tool that has really made me look a whole lot smarter. And to be honest with you, that is not an easy thing to do. So, Paul, questions? Or it's become a very, very fun tool for me to look at players that even when they think they're strong in a certain part of the game, they kind of scratch their head and they go, yeah, it's just not, it's clear, it's right there. So hopefully it's helpful and it helps you become a better instructor, and at the very worst, put your own game on it like I did. Apparently I'm very right-winged because most of my stuff was on the right side of that 0 line, unfortunately.
So you did have a couple questions come through. First one from Ted Galena. Do you get a message if your tour players have not made a post lately, or do you just ask them if they're putting their information in?
Yes, I actually get a text that comes through and it says Game Forge round. I wish I could find one here because Maya played a practice round yesterday. Here, Game Forge round. Maya Schechter, score 5. Birdies in position 0, bogeys 3, other 2. So I literally get a text whenever it comes through.
And the other question came from Kevin Walker: why Game Forge versus Decade or Shot by Shot, etc.?
Yeah, this was the only one, Kevin, that I found that tied in practice to the playing performance. And it's tying in what you're practicing to, is it making a difference in your game? Because it knows exactly those drills and it knows the score of those drills. And that to me, but I mean, the Decade thing is incredible. To be able to stand on a tee and know exactly where you have to aim, that's a tool on the golf course that is phenomenal. And I just viewed this more as a off the golf course tool that, let's see what happened on the course. We'll step away from the tee. And now we go over to the practice area. Now we can maybe practice a little bit smarter.
Anybody have any other questions? Feel free to either unmute yourself or use the chat feature again here.
I apologize for the PowerPoints, but I really didn't know. And honestly, go over there and check it out yourself and push all the buttons and whistles and give it a try. That just happens to be the way that I've used it.
Hey, Joe, it's Ted again. Ted Galena from Seymour.
Hey,
How you
Ted.
doing? I came in a little bit late. How do you make this introduction to your student, your tour player, or college player? I mean, is it a simple 5-minute conversation, or how do you do that?
Well, number one, I'll ask players, and the good part about the junior players now, with a lot of them having so much all their career, the parental, guidance is they're keeping stats of some kind. And so I'll kind of show them a little bit of the system and say, are you using stats? Yes. Okay. That's step 1. And there are some tour players that don't use stats, literally, and it's amazing. But are you using stats? Yes. Okay, but do you know what to practice to improve that? Well, that's partly our job to help them, especially on putting. It's, how is it your start line? Is it your speed? Is it your read? But to have the ability to go, what if we can make your practice more involved with some training, some drills, and some games so that you knew you were getting better, and the computer's going to tell you, is this really making a difference, or are you just the world's best at these drills? And that's what happens with some people. So it's, and I'm like, just try it out for 30 days. If you don't like it, there's no obligation, but it helps me teach you better and get a better picture of, I know you're hitting it good on the range. I can see that. I know you're winning these drills. I can see that. What's the piece we're missing when it comes to the golf course? Cool. Anybody else? Well, I thank you all for allowing me to share this time with you all. And you know, I think any time we can have something that's a little bit of a tool in our back pocket, and there are so many of them out there, and that's where, like Kevin talked about, decade. That's definitely, all those things are out there, and different players need different things. There's just no question about it. So if it's a tool that helps you teach better and helps them play better, I think it's a pretty good deal. But where is the next true frontier? I hate to say it, it's in all that big data that's out there. It's totally in those numbers and understanding what's happening when they're playing and what's happening when they're practicing, and how can we get them there faster and make them smile a little bit more.
Awesome information, Joe. Again, thank you so much for your time as well, to take out of the day and share it with our members today. Next week we do have Virgil Herring on the schedule, so feel free to tune in next week as well. Look forward to that. But that's all we have for today. So thank you all so much, and hope you all have a great week.
Have a great week, everyone.